Ski. Well, thank you all for coming. It's very brave of you to come out tonight. Very impressed. And horrible night, dark, black Melbourne nights. They're terrible with the rain and everything. Terrible, terrible, terrible. So, yeah, the fact you got here is pretty awesome. Really, I appreciate it. And hello. And then. Yes, courageous, I think. Courageous, very courageous. Yeah. Either that or there was just nothing to watch on Netflix, Stan, Disney, free-to-air TV, or whatever else you had recorded, Foxtel. There was absolutely nothing. So, anyway, I don't think that's the case. I think there's always something to watch on those. It is. So. It's wonderful that you take the opportunity. It really is, because it's I can sort of guarantee that coming here tonight you'll leave happier. I absolutely guarantee that. I mean that's a pretty remarkable thing to do. I mean if you go somewhere and do a lot of things, you think, oh, go watch a movie, okay, and then you go to the movie, you spend some money. The popcorn's soggy, the drinks are warm, the seats uncomfortable, the people beside you are messing around in the theatre, and the movie's not that good, and you come out feeling grumpy, and you think you've wasted your time and effort and everything, and that's a risk we take in life. Whatever we do, we make all these decisions. Oh, I want to be happy. I want to do this because it's great. It'll make me feel good. I'll feel good after it. But what is that good that we are trying to feel? I suppose that's the essence of it. What is it that good we are trying to feel? And of the two causes of feeling good, there's the external things. They're the things we're going to do. We're going to do something. We're going to eat something. We're going to look at something. We're going to hear something. We're going to smell something, taste something, touch something. Or we're going to think something really nice. And that's going to make me happy. That's going to make me feel good. I'm going to feel good with that. So those external things. Now, I probably hesitate. No, I'm pretty confident that you've all done all that sort of stuff. And that's why you're here, because you haven't found it doesn't actually make me feel that good all the time. I feel, well, I do it, but I don't actually feel that satisfied, like there's an empty. There's an emptiness. There's something empty in it. There's something empty in those experiences. They don't fulfill. They don't satiate. They're never satisfied. There's never the full satisfaction of complete repleteness, saying, I'm replete. I never have to experience that again because it has completely fulfilled me. That's impossible. Impossible with all those sensory experiences. There can't be. However, that's the external causes of feeling good, the external causes of feeling happiness or joy or whatever. And they're sort of unreliable, they're unpredictable, they're unreliable, they're insatiable, and then they're also impermanent. They're permanent. They change. And we don't have any control over how they change, because they have a nature that change. So, like Melbourne weather, you don't get attached to a sunny day, do you? Because by the afternoon it could be pouring rain. So, similarly with human beings, don't get attached to a sunny, smiling face and a delightful expression, because that can change like that to anger and yeah, sort of conflict very quickly, even someone you love. So that's the unpredictability of external causes of happiness, whereas why you're here, I believe, is to find an internal cause of happiness, because it is actually one thing we can control. It's more predictable. But to control it, we have to train the mind. But once we've trained the mind, we can actually get that deep well of peace whenever we want it. Whenever we want it, it can be there. It's sort of like on tap. We just have to turn it on and it's there. Even in situations that are challenging, difficult, conflict, or sickness, physical sickness, or stress, or loss, or grief. Well, we can turn that on. We can turn that on, that internal cause. So that of the two causes, the external causes, which are unpredictable, unreliable, insatiable, and impermanent, then we've got that's the external causes. Then we have the internal causes, which are predictable. They continue to satiate the more we involve with them. They continue to make you feel fulfilled. They don't cease. Like you have to drink a can of Coke on a hot day, and the first couple of gulps are really good, but then by the time you get to the end of a can, you're feeling a bit yucky. Then if you have another can, you'll feel really sick, and by the time you have third or fourth can, you'll be really terrible. So that's what the external causes. That they don't make you more replete, fulfilled, or content. The more you engage in them, they actually make you less happy, less suffering, maybe even physical problems. So physical illness and suffering. But with meditation, the more you experience it, the more replete you feel, the more complete, the more satiated, the more content, And so it's got that. That's the one difference between the external and the internal. The other really big thing is that it's under our control. Where we can control our mind if we train. We can control the mind, but we can't control other people. We can't control an enemy. An enemy is going to want to harm us and hurt us. And even our friends. Our friends turns into enemies, and when that happens, we can't control that either. So we can't control other external things, but we can control the mind and have that experience of peace, tranquility, and joy, which is an experience of joy. Peace and tranquility is an experience of joy. Okay, so how do we do that? We do that by meditation. Well, first of all, you do it by coming here, or going online and doing something. But it's actually better if you come here. It's much, much better if you come here. That's our sales pitch. Come here. Give us $5 and we can keep the lights on for another 20 minutes. And the heating. This has actually got heating under the ground. We've turned the air conditioning off because it's too noisy, but we've got heating underground. So your $5 will keep the heating on for about 3 minutes, I reckon. so anyhow, but it's good. It's good. Come here. Share it together. Experience it together, draw on the energy of other people, and draw on the energy of this place, which is quite a holy place, and the holy beings who've been here. Okay, so first thing, come here. Second thing is learn how to meditate. The third thing is go home and do it in your own time. I mean, easy. Find a place, find a teacher, find a teaching place, learn the stuff, go and do it, and then you get the results. It's really simple. If you don't go home and do it, if you don't do your homework, then it sort of stops, it sort of fizzles out. But if you do your homework every day and do a little bit of meditating, then it trickles along, it actually bubbles, and then it sort of gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and till one day you're a different person than what you used to be. And people say, gee, you're different. I'm so glad you got involved in Buddhism, because you were such a pain in the butt before, but now you're almost nice. You're almost a nice person. So one day somebody might say that too, if you're lucky. And then, but anyhow, so that's what meditation does. And so we learn how to do it, then we do it, we practice it, and we transform our mind, and our mind becomes transformed. But we go in little steps. So everybody, I think, here has been here before, although maybe is there anyone who hasn't been here before? Oh, good. 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. Okay, good. Okay, so this is Tara Institute. Welcome. Thank you for coming. We're a Buddhist centre. We teach Buddhist stuff. That's why we've got a Buddha here. We've got a big fat Buddha here, big happy, beautiful Buddha, and Buddhist text and all this iconography. That's all there to help us experience joy. Help us to experience joy. That's what it's there for. So we're Buddhists. So our teachers have been Buddhists. Our teachings come from the Buddha 2,500 years ago. And we're very lucky that we have teachers who are still great Tibetan lamas. Our teacher here came from Tibet, and then when the Chinese invaded, came to India, and then came to Australia eventually. So we have this great lineage of the Tibetan meditation techniques. We have alive. We have it alive. It's here. It's alive. Very special. We're very, very lucky. We don't know how lucky we are, I should say. So with that, to meditate, what does meditate mean? Meditate just means to become familiar with. It doesn't mean sitting in a tortuous sort of position. It means to become familiar with, So to become familiar with a positive mind, a virtuous mind, or at least, if not that, like a neutral mind. But not to become familiar with negative minds such as anger, hatred, jealousy, pride, ego, self-cherishing, all that sort of stuff. No, we're already familiar with that. That's one type of familiarity we don't want. We've all got that. We're expert at it. Now we've got to develop another sort of familiarity, which is familiarity with meditation, with virtuous and stable minds. Now, when we do the initial meditation, which is the meditation on the breathing, it's sort of a neutral object because it's not inherently virtuous. It's not inherently negative. It's neutral, but it has a very positive effect on the mind by stopping negative minds occurring, by stopping crazy thoughts happening and everything. So it's extremely beneficial to just calm the mind down, to calm the mind. And so we've all been rushed here and crazy, and it's black and it's raining and dodging cars and a little bit dangerous. We got here, so we're probably all a little bit sort of stressed in some way. So now the way to just stabilise the mind is just by doing breathing meditation. So we'll do that, very simple. We breathe through our nostrils, we don't breathe through our mouth. If you breathe through your mouth, it's not good. Not good. It's not good for your health, it's not good for anything. So breathe through your nostrils. If you can have even flow through both nostrils, that's good. And then as we meditate on the breath comes in, goes to the pit of the stomach, and then comes out. So we don't breathe through our chest, we don't go, because that hyperventilate, that overventilates. We use our diaphragm, and slowly in and out. And try not to make too much noise. And then just have your hands quietly in your lap. Now we'll do this for about 15 minutes, and then I might halfway through sort of just remind you to come back into the room and come back into your body, come back onto the meditation object. And then that will be, this will be a meditation. So you sort of, however comfortable you are, if you've sitting in a chair, try to have your feet on the ground or something, or on a cushion or something, and just have your back straight. Have your back very straight. That's important. Most important thing is to have your back straight. And then we're just going to do breathing meditation. If it helps, you can count the breath. One cycle is 1, the next cycle is 2, the next cycle is 3, etc. So we can do that if you're comfortable with that. Okay, so just breathing meditation for about 15 minutes. Just relax and enjoy. in your own time and at your own pace, you can just quietly cease the meditation and move around, etc. Okay, so that's just a simple stabilising meditation. Very, very good for stilling the mind, dealing with stress, anxiety, and just making the mind clearer. Very, very good, very, very, very useful, extremely useful, very easy to. The next things we do in Buddhist practice is then to transform the mind. So having stabilised the mind, making it a bit stiller, then we can engage in analytical meditation to make the mind better, to make our reactions to events more skillful, more generous, kinder, wiser, and then in that way we actually get the result we want, which is happiness, peace, happiness, joy, intimacy, friendship, so all those sort of things. Even wealth. That this is the way to get it. So we have in our sort of mind, unfortunately, two different opposing sort of predilections or mental states. One is the chaotic sort of negative minds that we're very, very familiar with. And then there's the positive, very positive minds we have, which we're also quite familiar with, that tend to get overrun by the negative states of mind. So those negative states of mind, things like anger, hatred, jealousy, pride, excessive desire, ignorance, doubt, grasping at the wrong view of how things exist, etc. And then on the other side of the ledger we have the very positive minds. And principal among those are the minds of love and compassion. Now we have been, in this series of classes, been looking at, to some extent, at the mind of love, because mind of love is beautiful. It's just so satisfying. But to have a way to generate it is so important. It just doesn't come spontaneously. We can't say, oh, meditate on love. You get it wrong. Because love and desire, attachment, desire, grasping, they're sort of a bit similar. Attachment and love, if you get them mixed up, then it's sort of like disaster. It's also, it can get you in a lot of trouble. Whereas, because both of them look at the object as being attractive. So if I look at you and say, oh, you're very attractive, what do I mean by that? Do I mean, I want to have you, possess you, use you, cajole you, get you to do what I want, etc. Use and abuse? Or is it, find you so attractive, the way like a mother would look at her child, just with that absolute delight and joy. A mother looks at a child and it's absolute delight. Obviously you look at your own mother, she comes in the room, and absolute delight. So that's attractiveness. But they're very, very different. Now similarly, so that's love, and then compassion is the next step. Compassion is a little bit harder because we have to confront the realities of life, our own experiences and then the experiences of others. Compassion is the wish that other living beings be free of suffering. So how can we do that when we hate somebody? Okay, that's too hard. But how can we do it all the time, even when we're having a little bit of a problem with somebody? Because at that stage we may even really want them to suffer, just to get them. And we may do something to make them suffer. So that's the antithesis of compassion. So Buddhists want to be compassionate. We want to be loving, because we realise that actually is the way to attain happiness in the future. That's what gives us the best results. So how do we develop compassion? Well, what is compassion? Compassion is the mind that wants to others, living beings, to be free of suffering. So then we have to say, well, what is suffering? And there are many different levels of suffering, and we're all familiar with the obvious ones. So tonight's a horrible night. It's dark, it's cold, we're tired, it's dangerous out there. Okay, that's suffering. The hurricane, the tornado that ripped through Alabama or wherever it was, in South United States, that was that's suffering, horrible suffering. The earthquakes, the famines in Sudan, horrible suffering, terrible, absolutely incredible suffering, incredible pain. None of us want that. Not even bugs want that. No, not even, a rat would want that suffering. So we have to differentiate ourselves a little bit from what a rat doesn't want to have famine. A rat doesn't want to be stepped on. A rat doesn't want to have excess heat or be in a tornado or have their house caved down upon them. So a rat doesn't want that. Humans don't want it, but we have to go deeper than, if we're going to just stay at that sort of like animal sort of thing, then we're going to miss out on a lot of the subtle things that happen in life, because we're going to say then that if somebody is not having that overt suffering, so they're wealthy, they're happy, they've got the perfect boyfriend, the perfect husband, Rupert Murdoch, he's perfectly happy. He's got his 6th wife or 5th, 5 or 6? 5 is it? Okay, he's 5. So he's perfectly happy. I mean, he's 90 odd years old. He's got his 5th wife. He's rich and powerful. So he's perfectly happy. Okay. So how can you feel compassion for him? Well, when you do, don't you? But then you're natural. But anyway, other people there's that. There's the absence of the overt suffering, but at a deeper level, there's a really other type of suffering, the suffering of change. So it shouldn't. He'll probably sue me. Oh God, he might sue me. I better be careful what I say. But okay, supposing there were a rich Anglo older male who had 5 wives and he was going through his 5th one and had everything. Well, then he's actually a name unknown, but so we're just a fictitious person. Then the fact that they have to keep moving like that for one circuit and recreating the same issues, that's a suffering of change. We think it's happiness, so we dive into it, and then it turns into the suffering again. Then we discard that, we go into the next one, dive into that, thinking it'll bring happiness, and it doesn't, it changes, and it brings suffering. And so that's a really good example of diving into it, suffering, diving into it, suffering again and again and again. So it's harder to feel compassion to somebody like that, but they're just suffering terribly. Then there's even a more deeper level than suffering than that, which is that the very fact that we exist, like an existential nature that we have, the very nature of our existence is a magnet for suffering. By that I mean that we are created, in the Buddhist view, we're created not by God, we're created by the actions we've created, and also by the crazy negative minds that precipitate those actions. So that negative karma and those afflicted minds at the core of our being will create suffering for us, will create problems. So even if we don't have the earthquakes, the typhoons, the blah blah blah, even if we don't have the unstable relationships and we're really content and there's still the nature of our existence is this very subtle dissatisfaction, very subtle suffering that comes from karma and the uncontrolled mind. Now when we look at those uncontrolled minds, then they come down, there are many of them, and we keep harking on them again, but anger is a very uncontrolled mind, it causes so much destruction. Excessive desire does, excessive egoistic pride. But one that we tend to focus on, that's a bit harder to understand, is the mind that really just cherishes our own happiness more than others. That mind, which we call the self-cherishing mind, is based on a fundamental ignorance of how things exist. We tend to misconstrue how things exist. I look at you and I think you're you, and you exist like you. But you don't, you're a creation of me. In many ways, I create everything here. So in this room, we've all got our different existences here. We're like those sci-fi movies where have, these inverted galaxies and timelines crossing over. We're a bit like that. But for some reason we're all crossing over here in this room tonight. But we've all got our own realities. We're all creating our own different realities. But at the heart of everything we do is this mind, very destructive, the mind, which seeks our own benefit ahead of others. This is a bit confronting because we're sort of told, look after yourself and be self. Yourself is the most important thing. And yes, in some ways, but we're going to do that smartly. by being incredibly self-centered and egoistic and driven for one's own impulses, we actually destroy a lot of the happiness and sources of happiness and relationships we have. And they can support and give us happiness. So that's really stupid grasping for one's own benefit. However, we can grasp for one's own benefit in a very smart way by saying that if I develop a mind of incredible love, compassion, concern for others, that loving kindness, then I will fulfill my own needs as well. My own needs will be fulfilled. Every need I have will be fulfilled. And for a start, what's the most important need we have? Well, let's get back to that fictitious white old guy who had 5 wives. Well, obviously he wants intimacy and friendship and something deep, a deep relationship, and has been unable to achieve that. So that is the driver of even the multi-billionaires in this world, to seek intimacy, friendship and joy. Even though they've got all this other stuff, that's what they want. And that's what we can't get it if it's a very self-centered mind, this self-cherishing mind, because it destroys relationships. But if we develop the mind that cherishes others more than ourselves, then naturally our relationships improve. It's a bit counter sort of intuitive in pop culture, but Buddhists are a bit counterintuitive in pop culture. We like to sort of threaten the ego. We like to threaten the ego, threaten our ego, because our ego is a real problem, real mischievous ego. Now, so that's a little bit about compassion. Now, we were talking about last week taking on our suffering now and letting it destroy this source of all our problems. So we can actually take on, in meditation we can take on the suffering that we are going to endure. Okay, so we have the next bit of suffering is going to have to sit still for 10 minutes. Okay, I'm going to sit still for 10 minutes and take on that suffering. Or I'm going to drive home safely and I'll gladly take on that suffering. But then as life goes on, there will be other challenges. There will be sickness, there will be aging, there will be death, there will be loss, there will be grief, there will be losing all those objects that we hold so dear. They're all going to be taken away from us. You know, our skin will sag, our hair will go grey, our bodies will become flabby. We'll lose all that life and vigour. It goes. So how can that suffering? How can we sort of take it on and develop courage? So if we take on that courage, if we take on that suffering now, get it to destroy that ego-grasping mind, that self-cherishing, egoistic mind, which is the cause of all suffering, then we sort of become free. And what that means then is once we've developed that courage with ourselves, then we can take on other living beings' suffering. So the people we love, we take on their suffering, and it destroys that egoistic mind. We don't get their cancer, we don't get their problems. It just destroys our egoistic mind, because the egoistic mind is the cause of all our problems. And then we can, having taken it from our friends, then we can take it from strangers, and then finally we can take on all the miseries of the world ourselves, all the miseries of all living beings. Take on all the suffering of all those people in Alabama, all those ones who've killed and lost everything, homeless. So take it all on to destroy our own self-cherishing mind. So this is, as some people were talking about, last week they mentioned the word tonglen. Tonglen means to give and to take. This is a very profound practice, a meditative practice to develop compassion and love. And in this one, where we're sort of doing the taking situation, we actually, by taking on the suffering of living beings, we become more compassionate. We become wiser. We become safer to living beings, because we don't threaten living beings anymore. Suddenly every living being's safer, because we're not going to harm them. So that's in one way we can say we can change the world in one meditation, because if we get rid of the minds of anger and hatred, develop the mind of love and compassion, and want to take on the suffering of living beings, even if it's only by meditation, suddenly every living being in this world has one less enemy. Every living being has one less enemy. That's you. Oh, there's 30 of us. We've got 30 less enemies. That's multiplying. That's great. So suddenly every living being in this world has 30 less enemies. That's awesome. So we've actually affected the world by not having an enemy that affects living beings, because everything's in a relation. So in that sense, we can validly say, in our crazy Buddhist logic, that by sitting down on our cushion and just meditating, we can affect the happiness of living beings, every living being, because we have the mind of love, loving kindness, compassion. That's a good way to think about it. Whereas if you're angry, hatred, like there was one guy today, and there was a road rage thing I witnessed, and this guy was going psycho in a ute to another van, and I thought, oh, you are just imperiling everybody. You know, you're just, it could hurt so many people. So suddenly, by the mind of anger, that whole environment around that intersection had suddenly become dangerous, a little bit dangerous, and you think, wow. So that's how quickly the mind of anger can cause danger, so quickly. Whereas the mind of love, if he'd been loving kindness, he would have gladly let that other person in front of him, and he wouldn't have imperiled everybody. There would have been less enemies at that point in time, down in Bentley Shopping Centre. Oh, how cute. So anyhow, so now this is a little bit complex. First of all, we're going to do this meditation. It's the Tonglen meditation, but it's the last part of it. We're having developed a great compassion for our own suffering. We take on all our own suffering. Now, tomorrow, the next month, the next year, all the way up to sickness, aging and death. And then for us, then there's the suffering of rebirth, and then until we gain enlightenment. So we could postulate, until I gain enlightenment, I'll gladly take on my suffering. It'll destroy the self-cherishing, ego-grasping mind, which is the cause of all my problem. Then we go, okay, now, somebody I love. My mum, my dad, my kid, the cat, whatever it is. There's probably someone in your life that you really care for. Okay, so just, I take on their suffering. Their obvious suffering, their deep, subtle suffering, I take it on. And what happens is they become completely free, and you could even say, look, and they attain Buddhahood, and they're completely free. Completely free. That would be beautiful. And then more people, other friends, then strangers, then enemies. So we'll just quickly try this. I'll just lead it through. So it's a bit complex, but we start. Complexity is okay. So start with yourself. You get in a meditation position, and we're going to imagine just taking on other living beings' suffering, and then, but it doesn't go into you. It's not like you getting an injection of cancer cells or something into it. It comes in, it destroys the self-cherishing mind, that grasping mind. Your own first, then we go to others, and then we imagine liberating all living beings. They're all free. They all become Buddhas. Okay, so we're just going to meditation posture again. Just do 3 breaths to stabilize the mind. Okay, so now we're going to do the taking on of our own suffering to destroy the self-cherishing mind at our heart. So all the anxieties, stresses, worries, concerns, pains or diseases we have now, we take on and willingly, and it destroys the self-cherishing mind. Just imagine that. Now, postulate for the rest of the week. All the problems you endure this week, you gladly take them on. They destroy the self-cherishing mind. Everything that's going to go wrong this week, you take on now to destroy the self-cherishing mind. Now this year, all the problems I face in this year, all the suffering, all the things I have to endure, I gladly take on to destroy the self-cherishing mind. Now as this life draws to a close, all the suffering I endure as I get old, as I become terminally ill, and as I die, I take that on gratefully to destroy the self-cherishing mind. Now, all the suffering, problems I endure until I reach Buddhahood, complete enlightenment, I take on now, gladly, willingly. And I become a complete Buddha by having destroyed the self-cherishing mind. Now imagine someone very close to me who's in torture, mental or physical torture, pain. I take on their suffering and they become freed of it. Their suffering destroys my self-cherishing mind. I gladly take it on, joyfully, and they are free. Now all my other friends, anyone close to me, I take on all their myriads of problems. It destroys the self-cherishing mind, and they become free. Now I take on the suffering, problems of every other living being in the world. Those who are strangers, those who are enemies even. Animals, humans, non-humans and non-animals. Take on all their suffering, all their problems, to destroy the self-cherishing mind. Now all living beings become liberated, they become like a Buddha, completely enlightened because of my meditation. All living beings are free from all sorrow, forever. And since I've destroyed my self-cherishing mind, I am free of all sorrow. I become like Buddha too. So I and all living beings, like completely enlightened, completely free. Just dwell in that space of the unification of your own mind and that of the Buddha nature. The Buddha nature and yourself are one. Okay, so when you feel like it, you can stop that aspect of the meditation, keep the energy there, keep the good energy, but just relax your body if you need to. Okay, I've done much too much talking, so now it's time for you to entertain me. Any questions, answers, yes, suggestions? Are we raving lunatics? Is everything I said wrong, stupid? Please tell us all your opinions. Love to know. Very, very wise people in the room. Yo, dude.
The difference between, in that process that we just went through, it wasn't so clear to me how contemplating one's own future suffering, imagining one's own future suffering could be so effective in destroying self-cherishing, as much as imagining or visualising perhaps a current bringing this role.
Okay. Sure.
That to me seems much clearer. It was, I guess I don't even tend to sort of imagine my own future suffering because that's not what I naturally want.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So in this meditation, we sort of, is it more effective to meditate on taking on others' suffering to destroy, or to achieve the goal of the meditation, rather than to focus on one's own suffering, something like that. So which is okay, just to sort of shrink what you said a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else got comments about that? I mean, that's a very interesting comment. I'd like to know other people's opinion. Yes. Hello, Miss Ingrid opinion. Yeah.
Can and should be avoided by developing a mental attitude that's not perturbed by it.
Okay. So the suffering that is yet to come can be avoided, attenuated by altering your mental attitude towards that suffering. Yeah.
It's the mind that causes the suffering, that causes the circumstances
Yep.
to be a suffering.
Okay.
So yeah, from that perspective,
Yeah. Sure.
why would I want to embrace that future suffering? Wouldn't I want to work on my mind so that future suffering is not experienced?
Okay, so if we work on our mind at the moment, is it possible to sort of even not experience that future suffering? Yeah, okay. So I'll get to your question in a minute, my answer, but I'm interested in other people's answer. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, sure. We spend our whole lives at the moment trying to avoid suffering. I mean, that is our two modus operandis at the moment are to be happy and to avoid suffering. And even the rat does that, you know. And we are a little bit better than rats, but we just have more sophisticated ways of doing that, including the clothes we wear, the buildings we do, the cars we drive, the friends we associate with. They're all decisions we've made to reduce our own suffering and to gain more happiness. But I think, you know, we talk about things are going to happen, and to develop courage. I suppose that's develop courage. To develop courage. I suppose that's it. Can we develop courage by acknowledging that, you know, one day these things are going to happen? What are the tools I am going to use at that point in time when I'm confronted by those things? So developing courage and confidence, and by just understanding the reality of our nature. So it's analogous a little bit to, you know, the person who jumps into the surf to save somebody who's drowning. Okay. If I am not a good swimmer and I jump into the surf to save my loved one, my mother, my child or something, then the risk is that I will drown and both of us will drown. So if we don't have the courage to take on our own suffering, which is our reality, that we are going to grow old, we are going to get sick, we're going to be separated from all our loved ones. Death is... all our experiences in life are alone, but death in particular is alone. And then we migrate to the next life alone. Then if we don't have the courage to do that, then how can we sort of help others to go through it? I suppose that's one aspect of this question, one aspect, just one aspect. I think there are many, many aspects, but it's a very good question. I think just keep doing the meditation and see what transpires. That's what I would say. It's a valid meditation, it works. Take on your own suffering first, destroy your own self to as you might. Because if we have enough confidence and enough experience in that, we can, as Ingrid said, we can change our mental attitude so profoundly that suffering, in inverted commas, that we experience, it doesn't cause us any pain. Those experiences that are labelled as suffering, such as aging and death even, and transmigrating to the next life, they are terrifying. They should be terrifying. They're not. The great lamas who have so thoroughly transformed their minds can approach death and aging with joy, because they know what's going to happen next. They know what's going to happen next. And that comes from, first of all, understanding our own state of existence, having the courage to confront the issues or the state of existence that we're currently in, and then we have the strength then to help others and confront those same issues. So, it always makes more sense if you want to help somebody, if you've sort of engaged with that experience they're going through. It's sort of, that's a bit more empathy, have a bit more empathy. That doesn't mean you have to go run out and get cancer to sort of be empathetic towards cancer people, but you can understand that the nature of existence is suffering, and cancer is going to happen, loss is going to happen, grief is going to happen, all sorts of problems. Poverty is going to happen, lose your money, lose your relationships, lose your car, lose your dog, everything, lose your children. All those things are going to happen, and they're all manifestations of the basic structure of existence. And if we can live with that, then we can be of more benefit to other people. Otherwise we're drowning. We've got to not drown. Rule number 1, don't drown. Rule number 2, get out there and save the person. But you've got to learn how to swim. And you've got to be a really good swimmer, because those waves aren't just little Port Phillip Bay trickling things. They're like these, these 15-foot high sort of massive things that are crashing down there. And that's what we never know what's going to... Life's going to curveball us, do we? Like those people in Alabama. 3 days ago they were having barbecues probably on outside their house, and now their house isn't there. Gone. All their positions are gone. So like that. So anyhow, that could happen to all of us, just like that. So anyhow, so that's my 2 bobs worth, but not very good 2 bobs worth. Anyone else? Sorry, have another go. Sorry.
Is it a sort of a lesson as well? Because you take on that suffering to somebody else, so
Yeah.
you know what to do when something else like that happens to you.
So when somebody else is suffering and you take on their suffering, you know what to do when that happens. Yeah, you can. I mean, sometimes there's nothing you can do. I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of my life working with people who are dying of cancer and other things. Sometimes nothing you can do except be kind. Except be kind. And I had one guy in today who came in and he just wanted to talk to me and he just wanted to say how I transformed his life, a patient of mine, how I transformed his life by being kind to him and understanding him. I don't think I did anything, but just by being kind. It's the first person in his life who he was able to talk about some deep issues that he'd never been able to disclose to anybody else. In regards to his sexuality and other stuff like that, and then transformed his life just by being kind. So I think that's it. And I mean, I don't have his issues. I don't think I do. I got other issues, but I mean, I don't have. But it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't matter. You recognise human suffering just by recognising suffering. Otherwise, you're not going to feel sorry for the fat white guy with the 5 wives. You're not going to feel sorry for him. But the fat white guy with the 5 wives is an object of compassion. He is. He is. If we understand the nature of suffering, and if we can develop enough compassion, then we can. And this is just one of the many different ways we've got. One of the many different ways. Yeah. Hello, Rad. That's your name, yeah, that's right. Yeah, hi.
Just to
Well, what's your name? Paul. Rad meet Paul. He's going to...
the way I visualise this meditation, I have all of the suffering already. So I have the anger and all of the afflicted mind, etc. It's in me. I sort of visualise that as a white light and a grey smoke.
Yeah.
And I sort of breathe in and it's white light, and it's white light, it's pure white light, it's in my chest. And I breathe out all of the suffering that I have, which is the afflicted mind, the anger, jealousy, etc. I already have all of this. And that bright white light grows and grows and grows and emanates and emanates. And then when I feel it, when I put that meditation to the suffering behind people, I'm breathing in their suffering as graceful. It comes in and it sort of dissolves in that beautiful bright light that I've created inside my mind and my chest.
Yeah.
And then I breathe out and that bright light is emanating from the crown of my head into this person or into the people that I'm
Yeah, lovely. Beautiful.
So in that way, you're taking on your suffering, you're taking on your own suffering, but you've already got all of the suffering inside. Like you're carrying it all. You want to get rid of it. So that you no longer experience the suffering.
Yeah, good. Perfect. I mean, so that's... Yeah, I mean, I hope you all heard what Rad said, and that's the way he's adapted it, and very beautiful. I mean, so in different ways, it's not prescriptive. This is not like, like I was brought up a Catholic, the Catholic catechism, you had to do this, believe. This is like, wow, this is my predilection. I can go, as Rad has explained, into one way. You Paul, you'll go a different way. But you'll take the same message with you and work on it, and it'll transform your mind. I guarantee this will transform your mind. It's a very profound, beautiful process. But this is, we've only just touched on it, And this is, I've scratched the surface. This is just to give you a little taste. But just keep coming along and asking questions and talking with other people too, because a lot of people in this room have had a lot of wonderful experiences, so speak with them. So we don't want to keep people too late. If you want to come and have a cup of tea, there's tea and coffee upstairs. I'll sit here and talk to people if you want. But thank you for coming. And this is the last of our session. Now, I won't be doing these for a couple of years because I'm going to India to study. I'm going to do some academic studies in India on Tibetan language and philosophy for a couple of years. So hopefully I'll see you again in a couple of years. So thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you.